All right, birth story with baby number two. Let's get into it. This is my son. And to remind you, my first birth was 4 hours. This birth was an hour and a half. It was crazy. So, 41 weeks in one day. I started to feel a little bit of something in at one point in the afternoon. And so we had my parents come and take my daughter. So at least she was gone. And that was made me feel better that we were ready to go with no kids in the house. So, but then they just stopped. Nothing happened. So I was like, okay. Then I'm awoken at 3 a.m. by my water breaking. So it was same thing as with my daughter. Water broke, it's go time. So 3 a.m. my water breaks and I call my midwife immediately and she's like, "Okay, do I have like 45 minutes to get there?" And I was like, "Yeah, it should be fine." I hung up with her. I had another contraction right after that. Called her back like a minute and a half later and was like, "No, you don't have 45 minutes. That was really, really intense." So she's like, "Okay." So she actually made it to the birth center before we did, even though we're a lot closer. So that was great. So got to the birth center. I felt like it took forever to get up the elevator, down the hallway, to get into the freaking room. And when they checked me, I was 8 centimeters and almost ready to go. It was the same thing as with my daughter. Go back and watch that video if you didn't. I just tried to melt into each of the contractions. It was a little even more intense this time because it was so much quicker that like I barely had time to even think about anything. This time I wasn't really wanting to be sitting on the ball with my arms on the bed. That didn't feel super good. I laid on the bed on my side actually. I didn't think that was going to be comfortable for me, but it was. And I tried that. And that now I was ready to push within like a maybe like 20 minutes of getting there. I started pushing and I tried to push on my side, but that wasn't really working. He wasn't moving down. So I wound up on my back, which I wasn't expecting. I was hoping to do a different position because they say that on your back it can be worse for them coming out. Um, but that was what worked for me. It was where I felt like I had the most power to stabilize myself and push him out. So I pushed for it was like a half hour maybe. It was a little longer than I thought. Maybe I guess he had to come down a little bit. When he came out, that was great for the first like 30 minutes. And then it got a little scary because I lost a decent amount of blood and I started to feel real lightheaded. I had to give him to my husband within after like that half hour because I was like, I need to lay down. I can't hold him anymore. Um, I was totally fine. Like it was a lot of blood, but it wasn't an alarming amount. So I felt really dizzy for like a good 2 hours. And then the afterwards contractions were crazy. I was not expecting that. Um, they didn't give me a shot of Pitocin in my leg until a little while later once we realized that I was bleeding a decent amount. So I totally wasn't expecting those crazy contractions afterwards. I've heard now, like now I've heard after having your first kid, the contractions can be pretty bad after because your uterus is shrinking back down. But I don't know why they're worse with the more kids you have. But if you're having your second child, just know that mentally prepared for that after having them, that you'll still have pretty intense contractions for the first like hour afterwards. Um, and then finally, I felt better. The contractions were getting better. They were able to give me some ibuprofen, which was nice. Um, and then we went home that afternoon. I had him at, so my water broke in my bed at 3 a.m. and then he was born at 4:32 in the morning. Yeah, so it was exactly an hour and a half. And then we were home by like 1 o'clock. Well, I could have gone earlier, but because of the bleeding and I wanted to rest in that bed, I could barely stand up for a little while. So they let me stay a little bit longer. But that was it. But he was born the very beginning of the pandemic. So it was so nice to not have to be at the hospital. With masks on and all that. All it was me, my husband, and the midwife. And at that point, people weren't, it was such the beginning of the pandemic. People weren't even really wearing masks yet. So it was nice to just be there with the three of us. I got to go home that day. The birth center was so amazing. Like I said in my other video, highly recommend. If you're low risk, everything's good, you should definitely think of doing a birth center if you want to have an unmedicated birth because the as far as going to an OB and going to a midwife, it's all the same things. You're going to the same appointments every 4 weeks, every 2 weeks. They do the exact same blood work, the same tests. It's all the same. And if they think that you're not, they monitor you throughout the pregnancy. And if they think that at some point you're not eligible to do it, naturally, or do it without medication with them, then you'll get transferred to the hospital, and or you'll go see an OB and it's fine. But yeah, it was an amazing experience. Even afterwards, I saw my regular OB after that, and she was so curious to know how my experience was. And even she said that for people with low risk pregnancies, she's like, a physician is really not necessary if everything is fine. The midwives are amazing. And I had a great team. You don't feel like a sick patient in a hospital. It like the birth center is so nice. It looks like a bedroom. It's all just comfortable, and you don't feel like you're being poked and prodded every 2 hours. That was like the worst part with my daughter, was being checked. Like you finally fall asleep, you finish breastfeeding, and then somebody comes in to check your blood pressure, and it's a lot. But it was so nice to be able to go home that day and for my daughter to meet her baby brother the same day. So it was a wonderful experience. Oh, and that was one other thing I was going to say. On our drive to the birth center, it's like 20 minutes. And at that point, I was in transition because when I got there, I was 8 centimeters, almost nine, almost ready to push. And I remember having one contraction in the car, and it was a big one. But for whatever reason, the place that I was listening to a hypnobirthing playlist in the car, and the woman was like, just breathe and relax. And it was the perfect timing to where it actually didn't hurt. I felt no pain for that one contraction. And like, for I couldn't be that chilled out for all of them. Some people can. Some people have like pain-free births. I didn't experience that with like most of them. It was still very intense, but I can see how you can get your mind to that place where you can just release into them. So that was a really cool experience to have one huge contraction that was like painless. That was really cool. But then at that point, I was in transition, and for me, transition is just really hard. But I mean, it's doable, but it's definitely crazy. And my husband, he's amazing. He's so chill and calm, and with my son, I didn't want to be touched really. With my daughter, he was incredible with like putting his hands in my back. I didn't have back labor with her, but he was so wonderful as a birth partner. And we didn't really talk too much about it beforehand, but anything I needed, he was right there with the water, with any, like he was just he's a very chill person, and was a huge help to me. So that's always great. But yeah, it was another great birth experience. And yeah, that was my second birth with my son. In the comments, let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them. And stay tuned for the next video where I will tell you about my little baby daughter's birth, who was just born 5 months ago.